This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Get a full year of CuriosityStream as well as my streaming service Nebula by using the link in the description. The Rebuild of Evangelion was a series of anime films by Hideaki Anno meant to serve as retellings of his original groundbreaking series, Neon Genesis Evangelion. The project, which was supposed to only be a simple redo of the original series with the current budget and support that he has now, quickly spiraled out of control, going from a project meant to take 4 years to a project that needed 14. A large part of this delay was the massive change in scope and purpose of the films. Because while the first movie is almost entirely a one-to-one retelling of the original anime, the plot soon quickly spirals into its own direction, with the third and fourth films being essentially their own original story that, rather than replace the original series like what the intention was, instead add to the original, serving as semi-sequels, kinda, that extended the thematic branches left from the original. This move and shift proved to be controversial and some didn't like it. But for what it's worth, for me I find that the rebuilds, especially 3.33 and 3.0 plus 1.0, to be incredibly engaging and important movies to the world of Evangelion, allowing a serious reflection on the original series and the way Anno's view of it, and himself, has changed over the years. This has absolutely nothing to do with the subject of today's video. Hey, did y'all know Demo Reel made a comeback? Demo Reel. Doug Walker's project about aspiring film remakers that was meant to be his replacement for the nostalgia critic. Known for doing so well that... Is it possible to ratio a YouTube series? For years, Demo Reel was an abandoned elephant in the room for not just Channel Awesome, but for the internet at large. It came out, failed, Nostalgia Critic came back, and everyone sorta looked beyond it, with only brief digs at its expense placed throughout NC episodes and public appearances. They never even gave it its own dedicated space on the site, either before or after its cancellation, and all the episodes were tossed in as a bonus on an otherwise Nostalgia Critic-focused DVD set. The fandom wanted to move on beyond Demo Reel, but it was clear that Channel Awesome wanted to move on even more, which made the news of more Demo Reel content coming out a huge surprise. October 1st. The cursed October 1st, 2021, on an 8-hour drive to see Dear Evan Hansen, phone is ringing with updates, Cinemassacre plagiarism scandal, and more Demo Reel content was being teased by Channel Awesome via an ominous stinger at the end of a Halloween trailer. And my initial reaction was a bit of a reluctance to deal with it, to be honest. In fact, I initially said I wasn't going to talk about it, giving a thorough and well-thought-out response of, it has come to my attention that Channel Awesome is teasing something Demo Reel related, and nope, 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 I can't not again, not anymore, nope, 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 nope. But I knew eventually at some point I'd have to cover it. Not because people wanted me to, or not just because people wanted me to, but because my comprehensive coverage of this series would feel incomplete without it. Demo Reel and I have a history now, we're bonded together. It's like The Fly, some of Demo Reel got in the teleporter and now I'm growing Donnie Dupre's fedora out from my flesh. Of course, my initial concern, as well as the suspicion of a lot of people, was that question you never really want to ask yourself in this sort of situation. Did I do this? Is this all my fault? The timing was certainly suspicious. After years of nobody really caring about Demo Reel, this YouTuber makes an essay about it that blows up and then suddenly Channel Awesome is producing more Demo Reel content. That's interesting, to say the least. But just to quell this train of thought, as much as I would love and dread to be responsible for such a thing, I don't think that's the case. For one, there's nothing in the content of the new Demo Reel stuff itself to make me think there's any connection between it and my video. If there was, I would celebrate, I'd lose my fucking mind. Furthermore, I don't think Doug has watched my video. I would be shocked if Doug watches any videos about himself. I would be shocked if Doug watches videos at all. In my head, Doug stares at the wall with a grin on his face until he's told it's time to go ADR his Joker impression somewhere. I think the main reason, though, why I don't think this is related to my vid is that this actually isn't a Doug project. This is a Walter project. For those who don't know, Walter is a frequent Channel Awesome contributor who has been appearing in the content in some way, shape, or form since 2015, either in his own various series and editorial content he's had over the years, or through his many cameos on Nostalgia Critic. If you've watched any Channel Awesome content, you've probably seen him. This is him here. This is also him here. He's been around a bunch. He was also in the Resident Evil 7 Demo Reel stuff. So, you know, he's had experience with this franchise before. One of the many projects Walter does for Channel Awesome is Twilight Tober Zone, a daily marathon focused on reviewing episodes of the original Twilight Zone, with a new video uploaded every day in October. Credit is where credit is due. These videos are actually pretty fun. Walter is clearly both passionate and knowledgeable when it comes to Twilight Zone, and does a good job capturing what makes the series so captivating even today. If you're someone who likes things like classic Cinemassacre Monster Madness, or if you've ever wanted a simple Twilight Zone companion, it wouldn't hurt to give it a watch. Walter began Twilight Tober Zone in 2020, going over the first 31 episodes of the series. Twilight Tober Zone wasn't only episode recaps and reviews, however. There were also tiny original segments attached onto certain videos. These stingers are mainly recreations and homages to whatever Twilight Zone episode that video was about, each one focusing on how a different Channel Awesome member is dealing with the isolation of being in a pandemic. They're nothing like super remarkable, and they're pretty basic, but they are neat enough. Honestly, if there's any weak link here, it's Doug's segment. Everyone else seems on their A game, giving a performance and presentation that fits the overall tone of Twilight Zone, and while not anything super serious, at least taking the exploration of loneliness seriously enough. Meanwhile, Doug's bit shows how he just can't stop mugging to the camera in a segment that's horrifically overacted with terrible computer overlays, and rather than actually meditating on loneliness or respectfully honoring the nature of Twilight Zone, instead starts with a joke about Doug writing a full film based on his infamously hated Melvin Brother of the Joker sketch, and ends with a cheap reference to Time Enough at Last that every single Twilight Zone parody has done. Despite this though, I'd say the 2020 Twilight Tober Zone content was interesting and well made enough. Nothing I'd say you need to track down, but a definite sign of quality. Hey, oh, hey! Is that the too silly World War II monster from the Wall video? Wow, what a cameo. I'm so glad it's here. Anyway, this leads us to 2021's Twilight Tober Zone, which also has these stingers, but this time more ambitious. This time, it's demo reel. The first segment starts with Malcolm watching old footage of himself in demo reel, feeling nostalgic about his first entry point with Channel Awesome. He ends up falling asleep in the process, which is a true portrayal of what it's like to watch demo reel, and he wakes up later that night. He starts hearing a voice calling his name, so he follows it into the wardrobe and prop room. He finds a mannequin that resembles himself, and suddenly the mannequin's head fades into color, and his eye opens up, once again chanting the name Malcolm. Malcolm gasps and then is gone, his hat falling to the ground. Next we see Rob Walker rummaging through belts for some reason, where he finds a tape recorder stashed among the pile of belts. He begins speaking into it, describing his demo reel character, offensive German stereotype Carl Copenhagen. In the hallway outside, the silhouetted figure of Carl emerges from a portal, his actions matching Rob's description and narration, until Carl has entered the room. He thanks Rob for bringing him back, as his face slowly shifts into color. As Carl attacks Rob, we see Donnie Dupre rush past the exterior window. The next segment focuses on Jim, who brings an old CRT TV he had just repaired into the Channel Awesome media room in order to give it to Walter. Except Walter isn't there. Before he knows it, the doors are locked. Suddenly Jim's demo reel character, offensive Irish stereotype Quinn, begins talking to him through the flat screen TV. Jim shuts the TV off, only for Quinn to appear on the CRT. He tries to escape again, but just constantly ends up walking to the same room. At one point, he sends his hand through the curtain, only to see it emerge back from the other side. Dejected, Jim begins talking to the TV. Quinn tells him that he wants out, which Jim says won't happen. But Quinn tries to win him over, saying that he knows that Jim misses playing Quinn, that he knows that Jim wants to be the star. As this is happening, Donnie flashes briefly on the TV. Quinn starts maniacally laughing as his face slowly gains color, Jim overacting in horror. Next we see Heather in the wig room, where an old antique phone is ringing. Putting the phone to her ear, she hears audio from Rebecca Stone from demo reel. Doug shows up suddenly and asks her what's up. She said the phone was ringing, and Doug notes it's unplugged. He leaves, telling Heather to join him in the green room when she's done. Heather inspects the phone more before leaving. As we begin another segment, the phone rings again, Heather staring at it before finally giving in and answering. When she does, we briefly see Donnie in the background. The phone at first plays more demo reel audio from Rebecca, before it transitions to audio of Rebecca's actress, Rachel, suddenly calling Heather Rebecca, and asking her how the demo reel job is going, and to say hi to Donnie. Heather initially tries to argue back, and hang up on the phone, only to stop when the voice on the phone tells her not to give up, that she wants this. That's the role of a lifetime. Suddenly there's a silence in the call, and the voice on the phone asks who this is. As Heather fades into color, she says, "I told you this. It's Rebecca." Heather hangs up and gives the camera an evil grin. The final part starts with the usual Twilight Tober Zone intro, before being interrupted by the demo reel title screen. We see Doug in his critic getup at his desk, contemplating, about to start doing his thing, when he gets interrupted by Jim, who tells him that they need to talk. Doug follows Jim to the hallway. Everyone in the cast, now fully taken over by the demo reel characters, walk in as they all transition into color. They say they're going to take Doug out as revenge for him killing them, and Doug runs away in fear. He runs into the wardrobe room and bumps into the Malcolm mannequin, which then asks Doug to help him. He tries to get into another room, only to see the door locked and Rob knocked out on the floor inside. He flees into the wig room, where the phone is ringing again. He answers it to hear Heather's voice, asking for help, before the line shifts, and suddenly it's Donnie on the phone, telling Doug that he thinks it's time for a reboot. Doug puts the phone down and runs away into another area, where he begins walking slower and slower as he gradually grows older and older, in a simple but honestly impressive visual effect. In fact, this whole thing is kind of impressive. I have to be honest with myself and with you all here when I say the Twilight Tober Zone revival of demo reel is good. It's nothing groundbreaking, it's not something one absolutely has to see or whatever, it's no Deers. But it does have a surprising amount of effort and talent and care put into it. For one, it just looks better than a lot of Channel Awesome productions. Black and white footage generally tends to come out better in these sorts of things anyway, as there's less obvious signs when something is poorly lit or graded, and the limited color palette means it's easier to produce striking, heavily contrasted images and moody shadows. It's why in the original demo reel series, the black and white footage generally looks much better than Doug's usual green sweat color grade job. But even accounting for that, the lighting in the new demo reel stuff is good. Very deliberate use of shadows and light sources create a sense of ominous tension and focus. There's a careful control here you don't really see in a lot of Channel Awesome stuff. This effort extends to the cinematography itself. There are a lot of neat camera angles here, whether it's this close-up of Malcolm with the mannequin reflected in the mirror, the dolly through the wardrobe rack, the camera on the ceiling. We got a top-down angle. That must have taken a lot of work. I was genuinely really surprised and really impressed to see that. When you compare the visuals here to something like the black and white footage from the original demo reel, it's clear that this one has more thought and care put into the lighting and framing of these shots. I know there is a difference here in that demo reel was trying to be a fly-on-the-wall, handheld production, and this is aiming for replicating the moody, highly polished Twilight Zone aesthetic, but the difference in skill shown is still vast, as it wasn't like the original demo reel was particularly good at producing quality cinematography even with its simpler presentation goal. Speaking of moody, the special also manages to keep a pretty tight grip on its tone, basically constantly at a sense of unease, and actually generating some real suspense out of the premise of, let's put the demo reel characters into Twilight Zone episodes. There's a commentary video for this where Walter and Jim go over the process of making it, and it's honestly a fun listen as they go over how they set up and plan shots, the desire to use as many practical effects as possible, like the aging makeup effect, and Walter going in depth on ways he tried to include Twilight Zone homages in his direction. It's fascinating to listen to because for once on this goddamn channel, you're listening to someone enthusiastically talk about legitimate directing choices and production techniques. It's by far the best directed thing I've seen from the main Channel Awesome crew in a long time. Maybe ever. The one thing about the demo reel revival, though, that would possibly be disappointing for demo reel fans, let's call them reel heads, I guess, is the fact that this isn't an actual thing that extends the story or development of these characters, but rather is just a short little Halloween spooky goof, much like the Resident Evil 7 thing, where the punchline is the absurdity of bringing back demo reel. There is some interesting continuation of where Review Must Go On left off, though, with the characters wanting revenge against Doug for nonchalantly killing them off and writing them out of existence, which is something that some actual reel heads did mind. Like, there were people who enjoyed demo reel who felt cheated by Doug killing off the characters in what was clearly a fit of anger. Thus, unlike the gag at the end of the Resident Evil 7 Let's Play, this does somewhat fit with where the series left off, rather than just arbitrarily making the characters in-universe psychopathic kidnappers for a laugh. While I may not really totally continue the story of demo reel, though, I do think that there is a fascinating side effect that comes from combining this Twilight Zone homage and demo reel characters. Demo reel started as a series about characters remaking movies, but from episode 3 on, it became a more serious drama where the movie remakes were actually integrated into the plot, with the characters living through them rather than remaking them, and dealing with it as seriously as you possibly could for something like demo reel. In a way, this is also what Twilight Tober Zone is doing. It's utilizing the characters of demo reel and placing them into stylistic homages to classic Twilight Zone episodes, using the imagery and tone of that series in order to flesh out the characters and actors of demo reel. So while it may not continue the plot of demo reel in a way that you'd expect a demo reel continuation to, it actually does feel like a good spiritual successor and natural extension for what Doug was trying to do in those final few episodes. Except this time vastly better, as Walter has seemed to put in way more effort in actually replicating and integrating what made the reference material so memorable in the first place. In short, by doing a homage to Doug Walker's worst show, Walter has actually ended up making the best episode of Doug Walker's worst show, and a showcase of what demo reel could have been if it was actually produced well. And that's wild, right? That Walter, the guy who Doug puts in Joker makeup so he can do this...
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
No.
Oh, we could get woke points with the progressive demographic. How? He could identify as clown.
Is able to actually direct an effective replication of a work of pop culture while continuing the overall themes and purpose of an original piece of content. And he was able to do this the whole fucking time? This actually got me thinking about Doug and his directing process. Why is it that something so simple as basic competency and care seems like such a revolutionary concept for this channel and company? And so, the revival of demo reel led me to look down another wormhole. I went ahead and watched all the Nostalgia Critic clipless reviews. I had kind of alluded to this in my original demo reel video, but in a lot of ways, the spirit of demo reel has carried on into modern Nostalgia Critic. When the series was revived back in 2013, the actors he had gotten for demo reel, Malcolm and Rachel, followed him over into the Critic videos, which meant an increase in sketches and recurring characters in order to accommodate their presence. Initially it was just these skits scattered throughout the review to mixed responses, but that changed dramatically come 2015 when Doug decided to do a Nostalgia Critic episode on Jurassic World while it was still in theaters. In order to make this work, rather than show any clips from the movie, Doug instead decided to recreate the film using himself, his crew of actors, and whatever costuming and makeup they could find. The end result is something that effectively looks and feels like demo reel. Recreations of movies using a lot of the same props and production styles as that show did, cut in between other segments meant to represent the real world that this is being filmed in. In the Jurassic World episode, Doug explains that this choice was made not just because the movie was in theaters and he needed footage, but because the movie studios hate him and give copyright strikes to his videos, even though he gives them free publicity. Which, sure, Doug, I'm sure there's a person at Universal Studios who personally hates you and wants to see you fail, and is manually doing all of these copyright claims just to spite you, even though you're doing marketing for them by informing people of the existence of Jurassic Park 3, and that Jurassic Park 3 is bad. People wouldn't have paid money for Jurassic Park 3 without you. Universal should be thanking you for covering Jurassic Park 3 and calling it a piece of shit, actually. The other weird thing about this explanation is that Doug delivers it as if this is the obvious choice for a copyright situation, or when a movie is in theaters. Like, this is the logical solution, as if there's not millions of YouTube critics managing to provide in-depth critiques of in-theater movies while only using promotional material. Red Letter Media didn't need to fully recreate Jack and Jill in order to make a 2-part video on it. But Doug Walker, well, he apparently needs to do a remake of Pixels in order to critique it while it's still in theaters. There's simply no other way. These early clipless videos generally followed the structure of a usual Nostalgia Critic video, with Doug recapping the plot while setting time aside for A-sides and quips and criticisms. The problem is they actually work less well than normal Nostalgia Critic reviews, as Doug will still make comments about how bad the special effects are or how awkward or boring a scene is, and all he can do is cut to his own recreation of the moment in question, exaggerated for comic effect of course, with no real clear conception for the viewer of what he's even talking about or a good frame of reference unless you have the moment from the movie fresh on your mind. At no point in the clipless reviews did the recreation serve any benefit rather than to just have something on screen, with most of it actually detracting and distracting from his overall arguments. Despite negative reception, these 2 clipless reviews brought in a lot of hits, a stat that Doug would use in the future to justify his continued production of them, and to dispute the idea that the videos were majorly hated, as if its success is not a case of a popular channel being able to get a boost on the algorithm by covering popular content while it's still in theaters and relevant and in high demand. The style of clipless reviews would change though with the Mad Max Fury Road video, where rather than a conventional critic recap that uses the clips as B-rolls and sketches, it's instead a recreation of the original film, almost in its entirety, with Critic getting involved in some sort of adaptation of the main plot. For the most part, future clipless videos are going to resemble this in some form, with even the most basic recap videos still featuring more complex integration of the film's content into the world of the review. I was originally going to break down each clipless review individually, but after some consideration I decided that it's not really necessary, and that I didn't want to force myself to recap episode by episode in a needlessly thorough manner in the effort of achieving some arbitrarily inflated runtime like some other creators. Unlike Demo Reel, which benefited from taking it episode by episode because each one was radically different compared to the last, all the Nostalgia Critic clipless reviews can be summarized as being needlessly cynical, self-absorbed vanity projects using low-quality recreations of better, more professional media in order for Doug to air out his personal grievances with other people and satisfy his unearned ambitions. Let's start out with the basics. These videos look like shit. Absolute garbage. Doug wants to recreate several blockbuster films without the money, resources, and frankly skill that would go into doing something like that, especially when one also has to be outputting stuff on a weekly pace. Doug's usual default is to place himself and his actors in front of a green screen wearing basic Halloween costumes or wielding party store props. Green screens are already hard enough to make feel real or interesting, but it doesn't help that Doug always shoots these in the most conventional, flat, straight-on way possible, with the backgrounds almost always composed of weirdly low-res stock images. We are now 10 years out from Demo Reel, and his work looks the same now as it did then. When not in front of the green screen, the visuals don't fare much better. No real compelling use of lighting, no interesting camera angles besides an occasional Dutch angle. There's a joke in one Nostalgia Critic video about the crew needing to white balance the camera, and it's a bold joke to make for someone who, to this day, just absolutely sucks at white balancing his shots. Any sort of special effects or action scene generally rely on the use of either bad CGI models or toys. I'm not using a demeaning word for prop, I mean actual, literal toy aisle toys. With this only being acknowledged as cheap and bad looking in videos, sometimes. That raises one of the biggest issues when it comes to the consumption of these videos. Why would anyone want to watch a review that looks like this? You could argue that it's a deliberate stylistic suck, and sometimes it is, sure, but that sometimes is very rare, and stylistic suck needs to at least be charming. Mystery Science Theater is famous for its low budget and props made out of recycled material found in the garbage, but it works because the show leans into it and turns it into a bit of scrappy charm, a showcase of the fun that comes from working with whatever resources you have. Doug videos, on the other hand, come across as an attempted showcase of talent. He wouldn't brag so much about the scope of these vids unless he deliberately intended them to be an earnest attempt to present something impressive. You don't film a full recreation of Suicide Squad in front of your green screen and premiere it in an actual fucking movie theater if you're going for LOL is supposed to look bad and amateur. The visual quality also raises the question of who these videos are actually for. Because when Doug starts doing the full movie recreations, the plotline and points he's trying to critique get incredibly muddled. Someone who hasn't seen the original movie won't understand what's going on because Doug is scattering plot recreations with his own OC content and occasional references to the source material with a critique here and there. And if you have seen the original movie, then, well, why would you want to watch this? Why would someone who has already seen Mad Max Fury Road want to watch Doug Walker produce a 30-minute version of the movie with toy cars, especially if all they want to see is whatever Doug thought about the movie? The Phantom of the Opera video is perhaps the worst case of this. Besides being basically unwatchably bad and one of the worst videos Doug's done, the video's nigh incomprehensible even to someone like me who knows a lot about Phantom of the Opera, let alone someone who knew nothing about it. And with Doug doing a piss-poor job at conveying the simple plot of Phantom, and making the songs consistently sound like ass, except for the person playing Christine, who is doing a pretty good job, there's a question of why would I even watch this, especially when there's way less obnoxious and better produced Phantom reviews online. The production values of these clipless videos are such a sticking point for me because from the point of view of a creator, especially one who has no doubt seen the backlash and ridicule these sorts of projects get, you'd think one would take it as a lesson to either improve and put more time and effort into increasing the production values, or alternatively, make an executive decision to not do any more, or at least stick to a more manageable scope. But instead, Doug seems to double down and seemingly refuses to get any better or respond to any feedback. To see what I mean by this, all you need to do is look at his Christmas with the Cranks video. This isn't a clipless review, as he does use footage from the movie, but it has a lot of the same DNA and fits the title of a spectacle review, as it uses an elaborate framing device and has several bits and story stuff interrupting the actual process of reviewing the film. In this video, Critic, deciding he wants to do a low-effort review of such a low-effort movie, says he's going back to his basics before recurring character Santa Christ shows up to teach Critic a lesson against this, by having him go back in time and meet his 2007 self and exchange places with him. Through this, modern Critic finds that he hates the old format, while past Critic hates the way the show has changed and tries to sabotage modern Critic so he can bring the show back to its glory days. The review ends with past Critic realizing that nobody likes watching someone just talk about a movie anymore, and modern Critic giving a speech meant to comfort him about how we shouldn't hide from our past, but we also need to evolve, and it's supposed to be this emotional and touching, and honestly, this video is gross. Really, really fucking gross and weirdly mean. At first glance, this could be seen as a heartwarming thing. After all, it's Doug acknowledging his change and showing how he, and by extension the critic, have grown since the series started. It's supposed to be a self-reflective piece where Doug examines his evolution as a critic and person. But when watching it, like actually watching it, the uncomfortable truth sets in. Past Critic isn't supposed to be a stand-in for past Critic. He's supposed to represent the audience, the people who hate Doug's clipless reviews, his sketches, his current style. He brings up all the complaints, the ways in which the reviews have gotten complicated, the fact that it's not just Doug anymore, the lack of classic Critic references, the change in wall color. And all these things are mentioned as the opposite of a backhanded compliment, a front-handed insult, I guess, where he brings them up in such a way as to convince the audience how much better the show is now. Like, whoa, you mean you're not just recapping the film? You mean you have all these effects and actors? You have recurring characters with arcs and storylines? You mean you're not using stale memes all the time? That's so terrible. You should go back to just yelling at the movie. It's all meant to show that anyone who criticizes this stuff is wrong and irrational and just wants the series to be bad and lazy now. The one funny thing about the video is that in the process of trying to show why the old format is worse than the new one, he ends up just kind of demonstrating the ways the new format doesn't work. Like, when he's trying to make it a low-effort classic review, there's these moments where he'll say a joke and then act surprised that there wasn't a sketch to accompany the joke he just made, and tries to present it as if the comment isn't as funny without a cutaway gag. Like, as if we need cutaway gags with his quips, as if this quick Halloween reference is incomplete without someone impersonating Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers to do a sketch for a few minutes. And when it comes time for him to demonstrate the effectiveness of the new format, he does so by having Malcolm show up to shoot a screenshot of the movie with a shotgun, or by showcasing his Hocus Pocus musical number he made over a fart-sounding MIDI track as an example of the complex analysis he's capable of providing now that he didn't then.
It's not a review, it's just sketches. You're not saying anything about the movie at all.
Our writing is atrocious and makes no goddamn sense, but you're left because we always use synchronized movement.
Yeah, no commentary in the slightest.
It really is an unpleasant review of an unpleasant movie. I've seen some say it's actually an uplifting message because it does end with that speech about embracing your past, but also evolving beyond your current self and the true meaning of Christmas. But the conclusion of the review doesn't actually match the rest of the content, which is overwhelmingly cynical and mean-spirited towards anyone that isn't Doug. This is actually a trick that Doug uses often when you watch these clipless or spectacle reviews. He presents mean-spirited and one-sided strawman takes meant to attack anything Doug dislikes, but he seems to think that if he includes some inspirational speech or self-aware joke towards the end, it disregards the previous content and suddenly becomes the thesis or message of the video, and deflects away from whatever came before. You can see this even in Demo Reel if we're being honest with ourselves. Doug tries to present a final episode turn to make Demo Reel a story about how awful we are to child actors and celebrities via the character of Donnie, as if that negates all the previous episodes where you see him poke fun at celebrities constantly, and the very first scene in the show, which has him making fun of Haley Joel Osment's performance in The Sixth Sense. Doug writes mean stuff and thinks that by showing empathy in the 11th hour, he has somehow created an empathy clock. So much Doug content has him present himself as the enlightened, correct one, the only right person in the room. Doug is the only person who can see that Hocus Pocus is a bad movie, and if you like the movie, you're actually just a brainwashed sheep who really actually secretly hates it. Doug likes Mad Max Fury Road, but everyone else who likes it, from fangirls to action fans, like it for the wrong reasons, unlike Doug, who likes it for the right reasons. Even as far back as Moulin Rouge in 2011, you can see this. Doug is the only one who sees that Moulin Rouge is terrible, and is the only one willing to admit it, and if anyone does like it, they simply like it in spite of it being bad. The review must go on, like I said in my original video, is Doug showing his spite and anger towards the audience and others, and instead of producing a video exploring why Demo Reel didn't work or finding a way to retool it, simply killing everyone off and using them and Nostalgia Critic as a stand-in for those in the audience who simply don't want change. Much like Christmas with the Cranks, it's Doug using the critic to showcase just how awful and misguided he thinks his audience is. I'm going to break the one rule I had for myself when I started this channel and talk in depth about his review of The Wall for a paragraph or so. Anyway, so this is a reason why The Wall review stands out so much to other people, why it gets discussed more often than his other work, why it's so infamous, why content about how bad it is can bring in millions of hits. It's sort of the apex of the problem with these clipless reviews and Nostalgia Critic as a whole. Doug took this art film and album known for being about self-reflection and introspection and vulnerability and turned it into an attack against Roger Waters, an attack against the filmmakers, and attacks against his audience and people online that he dislikes. It's an unprecedented refusal to approach the work on its own level and have any real sense of awareness or honesty with oneself. He made a fan film utilizing the imagery and music of The Wall, and all he could think to do was talk about things he thinks are dumb and bad. And much like with the other examples, he thinks that simply having a self-aware joke at the end about how he didn't actually review the movie is enough to make up for the fact that he didn't actually review the movie. Doug complains a lot of people don't like the production of his new reviews. I've seen it set at panels and comments and integrated into videos. Doug wants the respect of a filmmaker, he wants people to be impressed by the amount of work he puts into these recreations, and he hates the idea of just being a simple critic. In a way I can understand. After a decade, I would also want to evolve and change my style, and I'd also want to be respected as an artist and for the work I put in. But I think what Doug doesn't understand, and seemingly never has, is that when you're a critic, of course people come to see your critiques. If I go to a restaurant and the waiter decides that instead of walking my food to the table, he wants to cartwheel to show how good of a gymnast he is, I may be impressed by the attempt, but the most important thing is that the food gets to me. That's what I'm here for. And I'm certainly not going to be impressed if, in the attempt to do a cartwheel, you drop my food and also fall flat on your face. Doug wants to be respected as a critic without actually doing criticism, and he wants to be respected as a filmmaker without actually going into filmmaking, and so the result is a hodgepodge of work that's not good at either task. I would say that Doug would benefit from trying out a series or original production that wasn't based on anything, that didn't try to parody or recreate an existing work, but I don't think that's possible. Doug's flaw has always been his reliance on pre-existing material. Basically, everything he does is based on some source, whether that's him basing his critic style on reacting to clips, him writing his movies around a bunch of pop culture references, or at its worst, him having to transparently base the character backstories and demo reel off of movies and real-world tragedies. I have never seen a Doug Walker production that wasn't derivative of something else. I started this whole thing off by comparing Doug Walker to Evangelion, and I figured that the Rebuilds would be a natural extension of that comparison, but nope, not really. The Rebuilds were Anno reflecting on his change and growth since he started his signature franchise. So far, Doug has presented the illusion of growth and the illusion of self-reflection, but all of his work since then has seemed to be stuck in the mindset of angst and pettiness. Doug can't have a rebuild moment so long as he still insists on being stuck in End of Evangelion. I called this video The Return of Channel Awesome's demo reel, and on first glance that's because it's true. Demo reel's characters did return in a series of shorts by Walter in a way that showcases the stylistic potential of what demo reel could have been. But the other side of this is that demo reel didn't need to return, because it was always with us. Demo reel was a show about Donnie Dupree, a man desperate for recognition with a crew of two main actors who has otherwise ruined a lot of his interpersonal relationships, and who now makes parody recreations of Hollywood movies out of a sense of spite towards people he feels have wronged him, and as a way to showcase how much better he is at this compared to the work itself and other people. And now we have Modern Nostalgia Critic, which is a show about a man desperate for recognition with a crew of two main actors who has otherwise ruined a lot of his interpersonal relationships, and who now makes parody recreations of Hollywood movies out of a sense of spite towards people who have wronged him, and as a way to showcase how much better he is at this compared to the work itself and other people. And while the demo reel Twilight Zone revival showed the ideal version of what demo reel could have been, Nostalgia Critic shows the reality of what it was. A sloppily put together mess of ego and ambition. You know what I love? Content. This video talked a lot about content, and being a content creator, mainly about being a bad content creator. But did you know there's a site where you can see educational and entertaining work from a bunch of great content creators? I'm talking about Nebula, a streaming award-nominated service built by content creators for content creators. Get to experience exclusive and ad-free content from some of your favorite online essayists, like Maggie Mayfish, Princess Weeks, Sarah Zed, Lindsay Ellis, and, well, me. It's the best way to watch videos from creators you're already a fan of, as well as discover exciting brand new ones. And thanks to a deal with CuriosityStream, if you go to curiositystream.com/LadyEmily, you can get an entire year of CuriosityStream and Nebula for just $14.79, a 26% discount. If you don't know, CuriosityStream is a streaming service focused on documentaries and non-fiction content. In this video, I talked a lot about production and the choices that go into making a finished film. If that sort of thing interests you, then you should check out Great Film Composers, a 12-episode series going over the history of film scoring and some of the most notable musicians to work in the medium, with each episode representing a decade in film history. As someone who adores music and learning about movies, I found it a fascinating watch and a great introduction for anyone who has ever wanted to dig deeper into this element that honestly doesn't get a lot of focus. You can watch Great Film Composers as well as thousands of other documentaries on CuriosityStream. And the best part is that so long as you have CuriosityStream, you'll also have access to Nebula. Once you use the code to sign up for CuriosityStream, you'll receive an email from Nebula granting you access. So go to curiositystream.com/LadyEmily to get a year of CuriosityStream and Nebula at a discount and enjoy the hours upon hours of content there is to choose from. I'd like to thank my patrons once again for all their support, especially through that longer than intended hiatus from the channel. I hope everyone has been understanding. It's been a lot on my end, and I'm grateful for the support and the people who stuck by. I appreciate everyone whose names are scrolling down on the screen, but I'd also like to give a shout out to Andrew the Champion of Flavortown Pittman, Yuma Kazuga, the Cinemageddon Reviews, Darren Ost, Jessica Lane, Kyle Slaby, MD the Dude, Mr. Joshua, Pieman III, and Sophia McLaughlin. I don't normally plug my Patreon, but I have been doing bonus videos there now, so if you wanted to hear my thoughts on things like Dear Evan Hansen or Dragon Ball Super Superhero, or my reactions to the new Berserk chapters, which I've been reading every time they come out and recording my reactions, all of that is on the Patreon, accessible at every tier level. Just thought I'd throw that out there, let y'all know. Anyway, thanks everyone, see y'all soon. Oh, I just realized, I never finished recapping the end of the Twilight Tober Zone demo reel stuff. As Doug turns old, the demo reel cast break down the door and crowd him, slowly approaching and overtaking him as he looks on in horror. There's a cut to black, and suddenly Doug is back in the critic room. It's the same shot as before. Jim comes in once again. It's revealed that Doug is stuck here, as Nostalgia Critic, forced to relive the consequences of demo reel over and over again, something he can never ever stop. Nostalgia Critic is a purgatory, and one there is no escape from. Wait. Hold on. And branch off onto new ideas and original content. Instead, it doomed him into being the Nostalgia Critic forever, and that's something he can never ever stop. The Nostalgia Critic is a purgatory, and one that there is no escape from. And maybe he could have, if only demo reel hadn't failed.